Hey guys, mcfixit here. Today we are going to be working on a handrail at my grandma's house. She wants something to be able to come out of the garage very easily, and so we're going to have a handrail that comes down. We'll put a 4x4 post into the sleeve on the ground and anchor it down with sleeve anchors. I'll show you exactly how to do that, all the tools and supplies that you need to make this project happen. Here are the tools that you're going to need and the supplies. You're going to need a 4x4 by 8 foot, a 5/4 board by 6 inches by about 4 foot. You're going to want to make sure you have a circular saw or a chop saw to be able to cut those. You are going to need some kind of like an easy base or a base that allows you to screw it into the concrete if that is what you're screwing into. You'll need 4 sleeve anchors, 3/8 by 3 inch. Those are really important to make sure it stays in the concrete well. You'll also need the drill bit for that, a hammer drill. Then you'll also need a regular drill, or just switch out the drill bits because we will be using exterior screws, 2 1/4 inch, and those use T25. You're gonna need a square tape measure, something to mark with. I do like to palm sand everything down with 220 grit sandpaper and a shop vac to just make sure everything is nice and clean at the end. You will need 2 additional tools, a hammer and a 3/8 ratchet with a 1/2 inch socket on it. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and measure out. We want it to be about 24 inches long at the end of it right there where that post is going to sit. So we're just going to go ahead and put a mark on the ground at that 24 inches. And that way we kind of have an idea of where we want it. We will have to do a couple other measurements to know exactly where that's going to be squared up at. So instead of just measuring up a certain height, we went ahead and asked the person what exactly they wanted for the handrail, of how high would be the most comfortable. And so that's where we actually marked it. And so that handrail will stick out like that at an angle. Obviously we've not cut the board to make it fit perfect, but the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and square it up from the wall here down so we can get that base correctly squared up. So after you've determined the height, we're going to use it and square it up, bring it all the way down. You're going to put a mark on the ground down there, where exactly where you want it to go. Then you're going to take your square. You're going to square that up from that mark you just made on the ground. Go ahead and draw it out so you can see it. You can draw it nice and thick with your pencil. Then you take your level or some kind of straight edge, and you're going to go ahead and line it up straight. And then you're going to draw that line all the way back to where your X was back here. And that will give you the idea of exactly how far it needs to be. And that right there is the edge where your base will sit. And that sleeve goes right there, and that's where you're going to put in the screws. Because we're going to have that handrail up, we are going to mark 1 inch from that mark, and so that was the original square. Then we're going to go ahead and 1 inch and 1 inch on the other side. Then you can go ahead and use a straight edge. Go ahead and draw that, and that is exactly where it will be. You can kind of imagine that other mark is where that handrail will be, a couple of feet up above that. You can go ahead and draw in the circles there so you know exactly where you're going to put it in at. So this is where you take your hammer drill and your 3/8 masonry bit. Make sure it's masonry bit. Put it on the hammer. You're going to go ahead and start with this one. Don't do it yet, but you're going to want to go ahead and do this one, and then you will check with that sleeve to make sure you're all lined up and your other holes are exactly where they need to be. Other thing is to have your vac ready to go, just to be able to flip on and suck all that up as soon as you get done doing it. And so you can also put this up against it to see how long you need to go on that. And so we still got a bit more to go. And then you're going to test again, and we should be good. And you're going to go ahead and turn on your vac and suck all that up. Because there is a big crack right here, we are actually not going to put this one in. We do not want to further that crack and allow any more concrete damage to happen. So we're only going to put this one in, and then we'll hit up the other ones. So the next step, you're going to go ahead and take it, and you're going to want to make sure this is completely flat on the top, because the next step is to actually hammer it down into the hole. And if you have a bunch of threads exposed, you can really damage those. So you're going to go ahead and stick it where it needs to go, and you can go ahead and tap that in. Sometimes they go in really smooth and quick, and sometimes you do kind of have to hit it pretty hard. And you're going to go ahead and pretty much set that down to where it needs to go. And you're going to make sure you're checked for all of your squareness, because that's super important. There is a little wiggle room inside of these, which is designed so it does have that ability. Then that is what you'll need to do right there. So the next step is we're going to go ahead and spin this off. You may need your 1/2 inch depending on if it had any damage to it. Then you can go ahead and set that towards the side. You're going to lift this off. You're going to make sure your other hole is ready to go. And I did check when this was on here that that hole is still set to square with that. And so you're going to go ahead and start your next hole. And you can go ahead and make sure and check, make sure you're at the depth that you need to be. And then you're going to go ahead and vac it out. Then you're going to go and make sure you're not going to damage any of your threads. You can go ahead and put this back on and line that back up. You may want to go ahead and just loosely put this on just so you don't get any reverberations, and it is set exactly how it needs to be. And again, check for squareness. Go ahead and make sure all 4 are done the same if you're able to do 4. And then you're going to go ahead and grab your ratchet, put it in drive, and go ahead and start tightening them down. Just like that. And if you were to do the other one, you can go ahead and same steps repeat themselves. We're going to do that for the other bolt. But again, we're not going to do this one because it does look as if it will crack the concrete if we are not careful. And as you're doing this, it gets more and more snug, which is exactly what we want it to get. So continue to make sure you're lined up. Sometimes you will need to crank down a little bit more on one side than the other if it was not perfectly set in. And so this side will have a little bit more thread than the previous side, which is totally fine. It is meant to be able to kind of screw down right on top. Test to make sure that's nice and good, nice and solid again. If you want to go ahead and do that, you can, and then do the other side as well. So the first thing you're going to do is go ahead and find your line that we marked before, and then we're going to transfer it to the other side. And so we'll go ahead and do that right now, is that transfer of the line, and you'll put a little mark. Then you will go ahead and determine how far it is from the threshold of the door all the way up to that mark. And so you're going to go ahead and get your tape measure out, and that looks to be 32 inches exactly. Look at that. Then you're going to go ahead and take your tape measure back to your 2x4 with a post in 4x4 with your post in the ground, and you're going to go ahead and transfer that to be that 32-inch mark right there. And so you've got that marked as well. And so we did put the post already into the sleeve. Then you go ahead and find out exactly where that's at, and you can go up and mark it right up at the top right there, and you just kind of draw a line straight down using that door jamb as your mark, and you can see on there that you have a nice little mark. That gives you the ability to probably need to make it a little darker just because of the angle right there, so we can get a nice cut to where it is right against the door, right where it's supposed to be, and that allows you to be able to just have that nice smooth transition. And we will be taking a palm sander at the end and sanding all of this down. So this is the handrail right here. We're going to go ahead and cut it on that mark. So now that you've gone ahead and cut that, you can go ahead and put it up. Should sit nice and flush to that wall. You're going to go and find that mark. Then you're going to go ahead and mark right there with your pencil. Then we're actually going to bump it down a little bit because you want to be able to slide your hand without hitting that 4x4 post. So we're going to slide it down just a little bit from that, about an inch or two. Doesn't have to be exact, and go ahead and put that there. That way when your hand is on here, you're not running into the 2x4, and then we'll eventually cut and make that other side look nice and pretty as well. So remember, we have the line that we're not going to use. That was that transfer of the 32 inch a little bit shorter. So when you have your hand on it, you're not hitting the 4x4 post. So you go ahead and put your mark there. Then you're going to transfer your mark. So go ahead and put it on the side closest to you right now, the camera. Then on the back side, same thing, just up and down mark. Then we're going to go ahead and rotate the 4x4 post. Then you are going to go ahead and just put just a little bit of a mark on both sides, right there and right there. Then you're going to transfer that mark again. If you were using a kind of a larger chop saw, you may not have to do this, but because we are only using a circular saw, you will have to transfer your cut line pretty well between. The first cut you're going to do is going to be a full depth. You're going to get part of the way through, then we will have to rotate it and flip it the rest of the way. And then we're going to go ahead and rotate it and do our next cut. And if this isn't perfect, we do have that sanding pad, so we do have that option to be able to do that. And we are going to have to scoot it down just a little bit because it is going to drop off the edge. Just like that, and that gives us that nice edge right there that we are looking for. And so we might have to do just a touch of sanding, but that is okay. That's very easy to do. We are going to go ahead and do, for the leading edge, we're going to notch off the corner because your hand could come down and hit that. And so this just kind of helps make it a little bit nicer as your hand is coming down, so you're not going to hit this and hopefully never get a splinter. And so you're going to just go ahead and notch that little bit right there. Same concept, you're going to go ahead and grab the saw. Then rotate it and transfer that mark. And then now we're going to go ahead and palm sand that just really quickly. So you're going to go ahead and get your palm sander. 220 grit sandpaper works really well for this. You're going to hit up all of the edges that somebody could be touching. We will have to do on this handrail a little bit later, the other side, probably when it's installed, but you want to get these before they're installed to make sure it's done correctly. You just turn this on and it will pulsate and tear out any of the rough edges and make it look nice and neat. So that should feel really kind of smooth to the touch on those. And there is a little bit of a gouge on this one, so I am going to rotate that one. As I was feeling it, I could feel a little bit of a gouge, so I'm going to continue. That is okay. That's the purpose of being able to do this. You can make it nice and smooth. And if you're a bit of a perfectionist, you can also take off any of the numbering or anything like that you want. And you will want to kind of just go back over, make sure everything feels nice and smooth, because that is where a hand will be hitting. Go ahead and put the post in. If you do need to hit it with a hammer, but try not to, because you have made that really pretty if you can. Then you're going to check it for level. You're going to do it on both sides to make sure it's right where it needs to be, nice and level. Then the next step, after you make sure both sides are level, you're going to go ahead and take your T25 screws. There is 4 of them, so we're going to do 4 and 4 on the back side. And so go ahead and begin to put those in. Make sure the person is holding the post right where it is to be level. Then they're going to go on the back side and do the back 4 as well. So you're going to go ahead and kind of like dry fit it in, make sure it's up at the top, make sure you have that 2-inch hangover so you're not hitting your hand on that. Then you can go ahead and take your level, make sure it's nice and level, and then you're going to go ahead and draw your line. And then the other thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and draw just a little hitch down at the bottom, just so we can have that, and we'll go ahead and cut that outside. We're going to go ahead and make those 2 cuts. Then you're going to go ahead and get your palm sander and go ahead and start sanding. And since you have it out, we're going to go ahead and hit the entire thing up just one time, just to make sure it's really good and make sure there's no nicks or anything like that somebody's going to have happen to them. Flip it over. Then go ahead and test to make sure it's all smooth exactly how you want it. If you find any more bumps, go ahead and continue to sand to make sure it's complete. So now that it's all sanded, you go ahead and put it up right where you are going to go ahead and do it. And remember to have on this side down here, remember to have that 2-inch gap just like it should be. And it should line up nice and perfect. Then you're going to go ahead and pre-drill. And we're going to pre-drill to toenail it in. There should be a stud here and a stud here, double stud on this house, and so this will just help really hold it in well. You're going to go ahead and put your screw in. And notice that angle that we hit it in at. That is toenailing it in exactly what we want. And then the last thing to do is to put a few screws in on this last little bit after we go ahead and make sure everything is perfectly level. Now you may be tempted to screw it in too high on this. Remember, you do have that post that's down 2 inches, so make sure those do connect through into the 4x4 post. We're gonna go ahead and hit this up one last time with some sandpaper, that palm sander, and that is it. That is complete. Go ahead and like and subscribe. This will really help out, be able to let her get in and out of the garage much easier. Again, if you like what we did, please like, subscribe, comment if you do have any questions. Thank you guys so much for watching today.